It's amazing how many everyday products we trust, right up until we learn they're basically tiny household death traps disguised as convenience. And if you think you already know the worst of them, trust me, you really don't. 1. A non-stick pan heating on a stove seems like the peak of modern convenience until the coating reaches a temperature that turns it into a quiet chemical factory. The surface is marketed as miraculous, yet the moment it overheats, which happens faster than most people realize, it begins releasing fumes linked to respiratory irritation and long-term environmental accumulation. These pans are treated like friendly kitchen helpers, despite their reliance on PFAS compounds, the same chemicals currently causing class action lawsuits because they refuse to break down and accumulate in human bloodstreams like uninvited permanent guests. People assume that because it's sold in every store, it must be harmless. But that logic collapses the second the coating scratches, flakes, and dissolves into whatever meal is being cooked, transforming dinner into a microscopic chemical tasting menu no one actually ordered. 2. A bottle of antibacterial soap sitting by the sink presents itself as a beacon of hygiene, yet many formulas rely on compounds, especially triclosan, that have raised enough red flags to make regulatory agencies sweat. These soaps are marketed as superior to regular soap, despite offering no real-world advantage while contributing to antibiotic resistance. The slow-burning crisis that allows microbes to train like tiny athletes preparing for the bacterial Olympics. People lather enthusiastically, unaware they're participating in the microbial equivalent of selecting for stronger, meaner survivors. Even better, the chemical residue washes into waterways where it disrupts aquatic hormones and ecosystems already struggling to function. It's sold as a protective measure for households, but the danger lies in how casually it's used, quietly fueling a global medical problem while making consumers believe they're being extra responsible. 3. A bottle of air freshener misting through a living room gives the illusion of cleanliness, but the fresh air is typically a cocktail of volatile organic compounds engineered to smell pleasant while doing absolutely nothing to address actual pollutants. Many sprays contain phthalates, solvents, and ingredients that manufacturers don't have to disclose thanks to generous labeling loopholes, allowing a product designed for household comfort to operate like a subtle respiratory irritant. People spray these into enclosed rooms, treating them like a harmless upgrade to oxygen, unaware they're introducing compounds linked to headaches, asthma flare-ups, and hormone disruption. The product is celebrated for covering odors, yet that's precisely the problem. Masking instead of removing encourages people to ignore moisture, mold, and poor ventilation, letting the real hazards grow quietly behind the walls while the room continues smelling like artificial citrus optimism. 4. A seemingly harmless bottle of acetone nail polish remover sits on a vanity like an innocent beauty tool, but the fumes it releases can irritate eyes, throat, and lungs, especially in poorly ventilated spaces where people tend to use it. It evaporates aggressively, filling enclosed bathrooms with enough vapor to cause dizziness or headaches long before anyone notices something is wrong. Acetone's flammability adds another layer of charm, turning a misplaced candle or spark into an accidental lesson in combustion. Yet people treat it like a mild cosmetic aid, not a laboratory solvent with industrial applications. The danger isn't theatrical or dramatic. It's the slow, invisible accumulation of fumes that makes the product hazardous, especially when used frequently by people who assume that anything sold in a pink bottle couldn't possibly require caution. 5. A single lithium-ion battery powering a flashlight or toy seems too small to pose a threat, but these cells pack enough energy to rupture violently if punctured, overheated, or cheaply manufactured. Consumers treat them like harmless components rather than miniature chemical pressure vessels operating on the thin boundary between perfectly safe and unexpected thermal event. Cheaper batteries lack robust protection circuits, making them prone to swelling, overheating, and in catastrophic cases, venting flames in a process politely called thermal runaway, which is essentially a chemical chain reaction that refuses to stop once triggered. People toss them in junk drawers where metal objects can short the terminals, or leave them charging overnight in bargain chargers that regulate voltage about as reliably as a toddler with a mixing board. The danger lies in how mundane these batteries appear despite holding enough energy to turn small. Electronics into improvised fireworks. 6. A bottle of natural essential oil marketed as a holistic cure all sits on a nightstand with the serene confidence of a lifestyle influencer, Yet many oils can trigger asthma attacks, allergic reactions, and chemical burns when applied undiluted. The word natural is treated like a safety guarantee even though some oils are potent enough to disrupt hormones, cause liver stress, or react dangerously with medications. Diffusers disperse particles that irritate airways, especially in children and pets whose respiratory systems don't appreciate bathing in airborne plant chemistry experiments. People drip these concentrated substances into baths or onto skin without understanding that essential oils are effectively unregulated chemical extracts far stronger than anything nature intended to be inhaled in a closed room. The danger isn't mystical, it's chemistry without dosage control, dressed up in wellness marketing. 7. A basic, plug-in nightlight glowing softly in a child's bedroom looks too fragile to cause concern. Yet dozens of models have been recalled over the years for overheating, melting, and in some cases igniting nearby curtains or bedding. People assume low wattage means no risk, forgetting that continuous heat plus aging plastic plus dust equals a perfect recipe for smoldering fires. The device operates for hours unattended, often in rooms where everyone is asleep and no one notices the smell of damaged wiring until it's too late. The simplicity of the design makes it feel safe, but that's exactly why it's dangerous. It seduces users into thinking it requires no maintenance, no inspection, and no skepticism, quietly degrading until the nightlight becomes a night hazard. 8. A UV nail lamp in a salon looks like futuristic beauty technology, but the ultraviolet output may expose skin to wavelengths associated with increased DNA damage, the kind that accumulates silently until it becomes a problem years later. These lamps aren't regulated with the same rigor as medical UV devices, leaving variation in intensity, exposure time, and shielding. People slip their hands inside as casually as inserting a credit card, unaware that repeated exposure stacks up like microscopic sunburns delivered by a machine designed for aesthetics rather than dermatological caution. The risk isn't immediate pain or drama. It's chronic exposure that behaves like a long-term subscription to elevated skin cell lottery tickets, with the jackpot being something no one wants. 9. A bottle of oven cleaner stored under the sink holds the award for most casually owned industrial-grade substance, using corrosive chemicals strong enough to dissolve baked-on grease and, incidentally, your mucous membranes. People spray it in closed ovens, inhaling fumes that can irritate lungs and eyes, treating a product with clear hazard icons as just another cleaning step. The real danger arises when residue remains on surfaces after insufficient rinsing, turning the next preheat cycle into a chemical vapor release. It's packaged like a household helper, but functions more like a mild laboratory accident that everyone pretends is routine because it's been around for decades. The familiarity masks the fact that many formulas contain compounds with real potential for harm if handled casually. 10. A packet of silica gel tucked into a shoebox looks so harmless, it practically begs to be ignored. Yet it's precisely this invisibility that makes it risky around pets and young children who see small packets as food-like objects. While not toxic in the dramatic sense, silica gel can cause choking or digestive blockages, and some older packets contain indicator dyes with questionable safety profiles. The "Do Not Eat" label has become a cultural joke, which unfortunately encourages people to underestimate the seriousness of accidental ingestion. The danger isn't cinematic poisoning. It's the quiet, very preventable reality of airway obstruction or internal injury caused by an object whose sole job is moisture control, but somehow ends up in mouths far too often. 11. A box of powdered dishwasher detergent looks like the most boring object in a kitchen cabinet. Yet it carries enough alkaline punch to cause serious chemical burns if inhaled or accidentally ingested. The granules are formulated to break down baked-on food by essentially dissolving organic material, a process the human throat and eyes are not particularly designed to withstand. The child-proof lid is more of a polite suggestion than a reliable barrier, and the powder's tendency to cling to surfaces creates lingering dust that can irritate lungs long after a spill is cleaned up. People treat it like an upgraded version of soap rather than the industrial degreaser it actually resembles, forgetting that enzymes and caustic agents can trigger allergic reactions or corrosive injuries when handled casually. The danger is not theatrical. It's the combination of strong chemistry and everyday familiarity, a blend that encourages complacency right up until someone accidentally inhales a plume of powder that should have stayed inside the machine. 12. A bottle of fabric refresher spray sitting on a shelf promises to remove odors with a wave of perfumed optimism, but its mechanism relies on chemicals that bind to odor molecules and anything else in the air that happens to encounter the mist, including lungs. Users treat it like a harmless shortcut to cleanliness, ignoring that volatile compounds can linger in enclosed spaces, contributing to headaches, respiratory irritation, and indoor air quality problems that worsen over time. Many formulations use quaternary ammonium compounds, which are convenient for neutralizing smells but also associated with asthma development and skin sensitivity. The irony is that people often spray these products to mask dampness or mildew, effectively covering the sensory clues that something is growing behind the walls or under the carpet. Instead of fixing ventilation or addressing moisture, the product encourages a temporary illusion of cleanliness while quietly adding chemical load to the room, making it dangerous not because it's dramatic, but because it's deceptively effective at hiding real problems. 13. A compact power strip sitting behind a desk seems like the ultimate organizational tool, yet it's one of the most commonly misused electrical products in homes, quietly enabling people to overload circuits with confidence that borders on reckless optimism. Users plug in high-wattage appliances, heaters, chargers, and monitors as though the strip were a magical portal to infinite electricity, rather than a single overloaded pathway feeding through wiring that was never designed for this level of enthusiasm. Heat buildup begins long before anyone notices, especially once dust accumulates inside the housing, a combination that turns the strip into a surprisingly effective ignition source. Many strips also lack surge protection despite being marketed as safe, leaving sensitive electronics vulnerable to voltage spikes that can cause internal damage or fires. The danger stems from the illusion of convenience. People assume these devices regulate themselves, when in reality they simply obey whatever is plugged into them until the temperature rises high enough to reveal the limits of blind trust in plastic electrical hubs. 14. A bottle of long-lasting waterproof sunscreen sounds like a technological blessing, but the effectiveness drops sharply after swimming or sweating, even though the label's optimistic marketing encourages people to believe they're protected far longer than they actually are. Many consumers don't realize that missing a reapplication window leaves skin effectively unprotected despite the illusion of safety, resulting in deeper UV exposure that accumulates slowly and silently across years. Certain formulas rely on chemical filters that must be absorbed into the skin to function, a process that can trigger irritation, hormone disruption concerns, or allergic reactions in sensitive individuals. Mineral sunscreens avoid that issue but require thick, consistent coverage that most users apply too thinly for real protection. The danger isn't sunscreen itself, it's the false sense of security created by labels that promise durability the product cannot maintain, leading people to underestimate how quickly UV radiation can cause damage, especially during long outdoor exposures. 15. A simple humidifier humming in a bedroom at night appears to be a gentle solution to dry air, but once its water tank becomes a breeding ground for bacteria, mold, and mineral particulates, the device essentially transforms into a miniature aerosolizer, distributing contaminants directly into the lungs of everyone nearby. People rarely clean humidifiers as often as recommended, sometimes daily, because the maintenance instructions feel excessive for such a benign-looking appliance. As a result, the machine quietly disperses microorganisms and fine particles capable of triggering respiratory inflammation, allergic reactions, and in more severe cases, infections. Ultrasonic models create an additional hazard by converting dissolved minerals into airborne dust that settles onto surfaces and stays suspended in the air, making breathing conditions worse in homes that purchase the humidifier specifically to improve comfort. The danger is subtle. An item meant to moisturize the air ends up degrading its quality, simply because it's trusted more than it's maintained. 16. A humble bottle of rubbing alcohol sitting innocently in a medicine cabinet tends to convince people it's basically just water with ambition. But the moment someone decides to clean something quickly while also running a nearby heat source, it demonstrates why flammable liquids deserve more respect than they get. Its fumes drift quietly, gathering like an invisible audience waiting for a spark. And when one appears, even from something as mundane as a poorly seated plug, you suddenly have a miniature fire demonstration worthy of a public safety announcement. The irony is that people treat it like the safest disinfectant on Earth, forgetting that it evaporates faster than common sense and spreads across surfaces with the determination of a gossip channel. The danger isn't the bottle itself, but the false confidence it inspires, encouraging people to use fire and alcohol in the same room, like they're hosting a chemistry class taught by a sleep-deprived magician. 17. A seemingly harmless laundry pod sitting in a bowl-shaped container on a laundry shelf is a perfect example of how consumer convenience collided with visual design and produced something that looks suspiciously like a high-end candy. The pods contain concentrated detergents strong enough to strip stains and dignity, yet people insist on storing them in transparent containers as if proudly displaying an avant-garde dessert. The real danger occurs when pets, toddlers, or the occasional distracted adult mistakes the bright swirls for something edible, leading to chemical burns, respiratory issues, or a sudden crash course in poison control. Marketers call them pre-measured cleaning innovations, but they function more like edible-looking landmines waiting for someone to underestimate their deceptively cheerful colors. The pod isn't dangerous because it's powerful. It's dangerous because it's designed with all the restraint of a carnival prize and left sitting around in homes like harmless candy decor. 18. A typical aerosol sunscreen bottle at the beach pretends to be a modern miracle, but watching people use it reveals the real hazard. They spray themselves from 5 feet away on a windy day, covering the entire area except for the actual skin that needs protection. The product disperses into the air, creating a fine mist of flammable, inhalable chemicals that instantly form a protective barrier around absolutely nothing except nearby bystanders who didn't ask to be coated in SPF overspray. Inhaling aerosol sunscreen isn't the beauty hack marketing departments like to highlight. Yet it happens constantly because the convenience of spraying outweighs the need to consider basic physics. Add a nearby barbecue grill or sizzling beach fire pit, and suddenly the can's flammability warnings stop feeling like flamboyant legal paranoia and more like a prophecy. The danger doesn't come from what sunscreen does. It comes from how confidently people misuse it in ways that would make safety engineers quietly weep into their clipboards. 19. A simple glass coffee carafe resting on a counter looks too fragile to cause harm, yet these dainty pieces of heat-resistant optimism are responsible for an impressive number of kitchen disasters. The carafe behaves perfectly until someone places it on a cool granite surface moments after it's been sitting atop a scalding hot burner, prompting it to shatter dramatically, like it's auditioning for a slow-motion scene in a culinary action film. Shards scatter with enthusiasm, launching a caffeinated reenactment of a glitter bomb mixed with molten disappointment. The danger isn't just the glass, but the scalding coffee that accompanies it, which seems determined to reach every exposed surface with alarming speed. People trust the carafe because it's made for heat, forgetting that objects built for extreme temperatures still have emotional limits, and apparently the emotional limit for a coffee carafe is being placed gently on a countertop, like a normal kitchen object. 20. A stainless steel water bottle tipping over in a quiet room sounds harmless until the lid pops open and releases a tidal wave of pressurized liquid. That's been sloshing inside like a hyperactive ocean. Stainless bottles can trap heat and bacteria with the efficiency of a miniature sauna, especially when owners forget to wash them for days because it's only water, even though studies keep insisting that reusable bottles can rival pet bowls in microbial enthusiasm. People drink from them with unwavering faith that the container's metallic sheen equates to sanitation, ignoring that bacteria care very little about aesthetics. The danger grows when warm liquid combines with a sealed lid, turning the bottle into a hydration grenade ready to launch lukewarm regret onto laptops, paperwork, and anyone who dared trust a screw-top mechanism. The bottle is environmentally friendly, yes, but also existentially unfriendly when handled carelessly. 21. A decorative space-saving ladder shelf resting against a wall seems like the pinnacle of minimalist design, until someone loads it with more books, plants, and candles than a lifestyle influencer could manage. The shelf wobbles with the structural confidence of a folding chair at a family reunion, yet people treat it like a stable architectural fixture. The design is aesthetic first, physics second, and safety somewhere near the bottom of the priority list between looks nice in photos and just don't touch it too hard. When the shelf collapses, and it will, it does so with the enthusiasm of a tired actor finally deciding to quit mid-scene, launching potted plants and framed inspirational quotes across the room like motivational shrapnel. The danger lies not in the shelf's appearance, but in the unwavering belief that leaning furniture is stable, a belief history has disproven repeatedly and often painfully. 22. A reusable grocery container made from bamboo composite material appears to be the eco-friendly champion of kitchen storage until it's heated slightly too long, releasing compounds that manufacturers insist are probably fine, which is corporate language for, "We'd rather not discuss that right now." Bamboo products lull consumers into believing they combine environmental virtue with durability. But when exposed to heat, they behave more like impatient sculptures melting back into the earth. People microwave food in them with the confidence of someone who trusts big green labels over actual testing, unaware that the adhesives and binding resins can break down under high temperatures. Nothing ruins the eco-friendly fantasy, quite like discovering your container has warped into a shape better suited for abstract art. Bamboo may be natural, but that doesn't make the final product hazard-free, especially when mixed with industrial glues that have the emotional resilience of wet tissue. 23. A weighted blanket wrapped around someone's shoulders looks like a therapeutic hug until they fall asleep under it and wake up feeling like the blanket spent the night trying to negotiate their ransom. The blankets offer calming pressure but also trap heat with the determination of a microwave burrito sleeve, turning restful sleep into a slow bake. People assume heavier means safer, ignoring that improper use or excessive weight can restrict airflow or cause overheating, especially for children or individuals with certain health conditions. Manufacturers love to advertise them as deep-pressure comfort tools, but that description gracefully omits the part where users sometimes wake up sweating like they've been interrogated under stage lights. The danger isn't the weight itself, but the human assumption that if something is comforting in small doses, doubling it must be twice as healthy, which is precisely how people accidentally convert a stress relief tool into a personal steam chamber. 24. A bottle of quick-dry wood stain sitting on a shelf looks straightforward enough until someone decides to use it indoors without proper ventilation, transforming the room into an aromatic festival of solvents capable of inducing lightheadedness, nausea, and a deep philosophical conversation with the ceiling. The stain's fumes penetrate every surface and linger with the commitment of a long-term tenant who refuses to pay rent, filling the space with volatile compounds that are not remotely interested in providing a calming DIY experience. Users brag about how conveniently the stain dries, ignoring that the reason for the rapid drying is a chemical reaction better suited for outdoor spaces or, at minimum, a room with a window open wider than an envelope. The danger lies in casual exposure, where people underestimate the potency because the can is small and the project seems simple, resulting in several hours of breathing fumes that no one would willingly sign up for in any other context. 25. A wireless charging pad sitting elegantly on a desk promises futuristic convenience, yet beneath that sleek surface lives a coil that quietly generates heat with all the discretion of a laptop on its worst day. People toss phones, earbuds, and random metal objects onto it without thinking, unaware that placing conductive materials onto inductive chargers can sometimes lead to localized heating that's less mild warmth and more, this could cook a single ravioli. The pad pretends to be effortless, but its safety relies on precise alignment and airflow that rarely exist in actual household conditions, especially when people bury the charger under books, papers, or the eternal chaos of nightstands. The pad's danger isn't dramatic, but cumulative, as heat slowly degrades batteries and components, shortening device lifespan while convincing users that their gadgets are mysteriously aging faster than expected because the charger seemed convenient. 26. A portable power bank charging someone's phone in a backpack behaves like a polite little brick of electricity until one cheap circuit malfunctions and it decides to reinvent itself as a spontaneous heating device. These power banks are filled with lithium cells managed by tiny circuits that reality TV producers would describe as highly unstable personalities, especially in low-quality devices. People purchase them from discount bins with the same level of scrutiny they apply to buying gum, ignoring the fact that they're basically carrying a miniature energy reservoir that can misbehave when compressed, overheated, or shaken around inside a bag. The danger manifests quietly, a subtle warmth that escalates into something more concerning, accompanied by the unsettling realization that the backpack now contains both a power source and an unplanned science experiment. 27. A bottle of hydrogen peroxide bubbling gently on a cut gives the illusion of medical precision, yet most modern guidelines suggest it can actually damage healthy cells and delay healing, making it the healthcare equivalent of cleaning a scratch with enthusiasm but questionable judgment. People cling to the fizzing reaction as proof it's working, unaware that the bubbles indicate oxygen release, not bacterial annihilation. The chemical is useful for sterilizing surfaces and disinfecting tools, but applying it repeatedly to wounds can act like a miniature demolition crew tearing through delicate tissue. The danger isn't immediate harm, but the long-term effect of repeatedly irritating skin while believing you're doing something beneficial. The bottle sits confidently on shelves, as if endorsed by time itself, even though medical understanding has moved on while consumers continue reenacting 1950s first aid doctrine. 28. A compact bug zapper hanging on a porch advertises itself as a mosquito-slaying hero, but studies repeatedly show that it mostly kills harmless insects while leaving mosquitoes largely unimpressed. People gather around the device like worshippers at an electric shrine, enjoying the steady crackle of insect bodies vaporizing without noticing that the population of biting pests remains suspiciously unchanged. Meanwhile, beneficial pollinators and small wildlife take the brunt of the damage, making the zapper less of a targeted defense tool and more of a chaotic lightning trap, indiscriminately eliminating bystanders. The danger is environmental, a slow erosion of the local ecosystem disguised as backyard entertainment, as homeowners celebrate the sound of the device without realizing it's accomplishing the insect equivalent of arresting innocent bystanders while the actual criminals walk free. 29. A retractable dog leash extending across a sidewalk looks like a miracle of convenience until the dog decides to accelerate from 0 to exhilarating in half a second, turning the cord into a tripwire engineered by someone with an overly dramatic imagination. The thin line can wrap around limbs, poles, or other dogs with the determination of a wire designed specifically to cause chaos, and the sudden tension can injure both pet and owner. People love the freedom it gives, ignoring the fact that the mechanism jams just often enough to introduce an element of surprise betrayal. Retractable leashes aren't inherently evil. They're simply devices that require more attention and reflexes than most people have during a casual walk, which is how a simple stroll can escalate into a physics lesson involving momentum, torque, and maybe mild panic. 30. A seemingly innocent household humidifier puffing a fine mist into the air appears wholesome enough, but the moment someone fills it with tap water instead of distilled water, it begins distributing mineral deposits and microbial souvenirs throughout the room. The warm mist models can even grow bacteria and mold internally, transforming the machine into a microscopic sprinkler system for respiratory irritants. People treat humidifiers like automated comfort devices, forgetting that any tank of standing water is essentially a tiny pond desperately trying to support life. If not cleaned regularly, the device converts daily hydration into a haze of airborne contaminants. The danger isn't the moisture, it's the assumption that adding water to the air is inherently healthy, even when done through a device that needs more maintenance than the average houseplant. 31. A tiny bottle of multi-purpose adhesive sitting in a drawer acts innocent until someone uses it to secure something structural, unaware that the glue's intended purpose is more craft project stability than load-bearing responsibility. Adhesives have limits, yet people routinely overestimate them, patching broken shelves, mounting hooks, or attempting fixes that should involve actual hardware. The glue holds briefly, offering a deceptive sense of victory before failing at the exact moment the repaired object is holding something valuable or fragile. This pattern repeats endlessly because humans believe strongly in convenience over physics. The danger is subtle. Misplaced trust leads to sudden collapses, falling objects, and an important reminder that marketing phrases like multi-purpose are not promises. They're suggestions gently warning people not to expect miracles from a bottle that costs less than a cup of coffee. If all that didn't convince you nothing is safe, congratulations. You're already one of us. Drop your own contenders for dumbest danger below, and maybe subscribe before everything explodes.